But like the underlying point about the entire game last night, whether it was the match itself or the analysis around it, or any conversation about it, was the fact that England were happy to lose it. And I wondered how much that implicated
I wouldn't agree with that.
on every decision that was being made on the pitch last night.
I'd agree in terms of utter devastation and from England's point of view, in terms of they've lost the game, what's coming down the road in terms of the draw as it's laid out. No, not. But in terms of how it affected their approach to the game, I don't think so. I think actually Southgate had an obligation. I think he has a professional obligation himself and a duty almost to his players, particularly players who have come in and hadn't played previously, to approach the game in exactly the same manner. And if he hadn't have done that, if his approach had been slightly different on the training pitch, anything small detail, just in terms of even attitude, how he was kind of carrying himself, wasn't taking it any way as seriously as he had done the previous games, I think his standing would drop in the eyes of the players, and I think he would have known that. So I think he had a responsibility to approach it exactly.
But they all collectively
the same way.
not just understand or know that actually losing this game, or the sort of bizarre fair play rule.
Yeah.
That's going to see us get an
I
easier
really
route.
don't think so. You can't get into everybody's mindset, but I really don't see that. The players coming in for the first game, there's a lot of changes in that England team. I'm not saying you can't. It's easily said there's places up for grabs. Players coming in, they know that.
Yeah.
Players coming in, no, it's not really place up for grabs.
Yeah.
Maybe one or two positions. Danny Rowe was coming in, may have thought great 90 minutes potentially me starting.
Yeah.
Maybe Rashford coming in ahead of potentially starting. So one or two players may have thought an opportunity to actually play in the last 16, but other players there, the likes of Vardy coming in, Jones, Cahill, knew this was one night only. But even still, the determination they would have wanted to play well, to win the game, to have that on their CD. They played in the World Cup, they played 90 minutes in a winning team. That would absolutely override absolutely everything.
Completely. And I think when you look at somebody like Jamie Vardy, like to say that he went out there with the possibility of losing and said that opportunity of losing looks quite attractive to me, it's just not true. That's just not the way he approaches games of football. It's the same with Eric Dyer, despite the fact that inadvertently he might have played in a way which would have allowed England to lose, but the purpose certainly wasn't to lose. I think to say that Jordan Pickford's dive was done in a manner that was deliberate to not try and catch the ball.
I'm not even saying that, right? Like, the difficculty here is that it is such to a degree, right? Because it's such an untypical game, because everything you say is obviously 100% accurate to 99.99999% of games that these players will ever play. So that's the mindset of winning at all costs and no matter what. I just think it's such an outlier of a game. Like, one thought, and we mentioned it outside, that I had was that at some point in the week, you bank the fact that England have got the most preferable route. And they would have been aware of that before they went into the game, that actually losing the game or having a worse fair play record would have resulted in a more favourable route. So that just exists. There wasn't any ambiguity about it. If this happens, if that happens, that was in the bank.
Ahead to the quarter-final draw.
That's
potentially.
in the bank, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, in that context, does like a Vardy or a Rashford at some point go up to Southgate? I'm not saying they would have ever openly discussed it as a team, right? Because, like you say, in terms of professionalism and stuff, that would have been a bit bizarre. But at some point in the week, I think if I'm Rashford, I'm going up to Gareth Southgate at some point and I'm going, listen...
This is Adrian's weakest argument in the morning, by the way.
If I get one-on-one... I'm just saying, I think this is what I would have done. If I get one-on-one, do you want me to bang it or hit Rose Ed?
Oh, come on.
Thank you.
Come on.
Thank you. Let's leave it there.
All I'm saying is... Sorry, listen to what I'm saying.
We just did.
Who the hell would actually have that argument?
I'm not having an argument. I'm saying that I would have gone to the manager. Like, I'm not saying... It's up to Gareth Southgate to go, no, listen... You got to put that in the back of the net.
Can you imagine what Gareth Southgate, what your perception would be? I'm going to buy into this anyway. I shouldn't even be having this conversation. I'm going to buy into it anyway. Like, can you imagine Gareth Southgate's perception of those players? What he would have thought of those players having left the room and come to see him and say, "Gaffer, do you want me to put that ball in the back of the net? Or have I got your permission to actually kick this ball wide?"
Just so we're sure, I put that away, right?
Oh, come on.
The only argument...
So, imagine...
He's not being serious.
I'm 100% being serious.
How much respect would you have for Marcus Rashford if you even asked that question?
It's not going to happen. It's telling the centre forward not to hit the target when he could score a World Cup as well. The only argument I made to Adrian, which I think does stand up, where the manager potentially that could influence things, and he'd never admit to this, almost like in a very subliminal level, is in terms of the team that they picked, the amount of changes that both Belgium and England in particular made. Because I think if England had to win that game, top the group, to play Sweden or Switzerland in the quarterfinals, I'd hazard a guess you wouldn't have seen quite as many changes. You would have seen a number in terms of yellow cards, you would have seen a little bit of a shuffling of the pack, but as many as 8 changes, I don't think so. So if you're asking me in terms of any kind of evidence that potentially Southgate isn't devastated at the fact that they've come second in the group and potentially going to be facing Sweden or Switzerland ahead of Brazil, that would have been it. The actual amount of changes
and he doesn't bring on Harry Kane if he's chasing the game.
But he can camouflage that by saying, "Oh, players need, yellow cards. I need to get game time, cohesion with the squad. I need to make these changes." So he can kind of camouflage it in that respect and get away with it. But that's the only way. That's the only argument for me in terms of potentially.
He didn't want to win the game. That's what you're saying.
Not that he didn't want to win the game, but there's not utter devastation that they haven't, and they've come second in the group.
The whole spectre of this changed yesterday at 5 o'clock when Colombia came second in Group H. It changed everything. At that point, England and Belgium's mentality was, right, we need to top this group, because you can forget about the quarterfinals, because we've got a hell of a battle on our hands if we don't get Japan in the last 16. Japan, the weakest side in the last 16. And that was the reward for finishing top. It was a free pass into the quarterfinals.
I know, but
it changed everything when Colombia finished second.
And actually, look, I think that's actually a valid point. We have a bit of a look at the schedule there on the screen. But yeah, I think that's the point. Like that, it is that actually Belgium have the easier game up next, but obviously England are sort of way ahead of themselves. They're not even considering that game. It's like, well, when we beat Colombia, and Colombia are a pretty good team, obviously. But
a quarter-final result for England is a good result. Yeah. And getting Japan in the last 16 would have been a golden ticket for Gareth Southgate to go home to England and say, listen, we had a good World Cup. Yeah. Plus, you get a free hit at Brazil.
Yeah, I would have liked. I must admit, I would have liked it in England as a standalone game, England v Brazil, because I still think, and I know it was a poor result last night, but they're still a dangerous team. They get the strongest team out, as we spoke about before. The energy, the pace they have high up the pitch. Particularly, Brazil have had their moments defensive in the competition already, where you look at them and think, yeah, you can get at them. Not particularly across the defensive line, but the protection they have in front. I'm not a big, massive fan of Casemiro and that holding midfield position. How he's in there ahead of Fernandinho, I don't know. Fernandinho for me is head and shoulders above him in terms of the quality of his defending, reading danger, mobility, quick over the ground. And as well as that, Casemiro, he's got Coutinho and Paulino ahead of him, who again only want to go one way, head up the other end of the pitch. So for me, the type of players that England have in forward areas of the pitch, the likes of Dele Alli, Lingard, obviously Harry Kane, not so much pace, but Sterling and a bit of pace down the flanks. Even Brazil, as good as they are going forward, England, for me, a dangerous side to cause them problems. So in some ways, I think it's a little bit of a shame if they don't get them, which they won't now in the quarterfinals.
I did enjoy the ITV reporter after the game saying to Gareth Southgate, Gareth, did you know that now by having lost this game, you are now going to have the easier route if we were to progress to the later stages? Like as if this was new news to Gareth Southgate, who, to be fair to him, held a very sort of stern face to seriously address the question.
Yeah, but what we haven't talked about is kind of a little bit of a negative mindset, because over in the UK, and it's been building a little bit of positivity, particularly off the back of Panama, has really been a lot of talk and a lot of feel good around the team, even the players themselves, the confidence amongst the players, and they haven't had a bump of the road as yet. Two good wins, scoring a lot of goals against substandard opposition, but even still, the atmosphere is great, the team, it's all been good. It hasn't been one kind of negative spin. Now all of a sudden, boom, a bump on the road. They've lost, whether in terms of that little bit of maybe self-doubt. There'll be a couple of little negative headlines now in the UK papers this morning, so it'll be interesting to see how that kind of affects dynamic within the squad.
I saw some of the flashes from some of the UK papers. I don't know if some of them are reflected here, but they're all like, this is well done, England, where the road is clear. Let's go for it. They're all sort of seeing the path.
So no, in terms of the performance.
So take a quick flip at
I'll be very surprised there's not a little bit of criticism in terms of maybe the manner of the.
I think they've written it off. I think they're just writing it off as a listen. We weren't really trying a leg here. Still think this was a clever idea, Gareth.
There you go. That's Daily Mail,
so to be fair, this is backing up your point, Kenny.
Cheers, Adrian. Thanks for that. Just shove yourself under the bus there.
Second best, asks the Sun.
This is what I'm talking about. So you're going to get this. This was always...
Well played, lads. There we go. Come on.
Sarcasm. Heavy sarcasm there, Adrian.
The Sun do not do sarcasm, Kenny. Come on. They beat you over the head with the bloody obvious.
Lucky lose. Yeah, so that's what I'm saying.
Pass to the semis. Jesus.
This way to the final. Here we go. That's what I was getting at. There we go. That's the one.
That's more delusional than the Panama reaction. Way more delusional. To say that this Colombia game is just a complete write-off. It's absolute nonsense.
I know there won't be. Oh, no, I promise you, there will be some argument over in the UK papers this morning in terms of big reality check here now. We're getting a little bit carried away. Let's come back down to earth now in terms of
doesn't sound like it from those headlines.
Yeah, but that's just agents being selected.